Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Senate Finance Committee. If you would open the roll, please.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for joining us here today, and I apologize for the lateness of the hour. However, it would not come as any surprise to you that our professional staff has been working incredible hours to bring together the budget that we are about to present to you, and I thank them for their incredible efforts. I'd like to preemptively state unequivocally that we are only here to discuss the Senate's budget and to continue to discharge our legislative responsibilities as it relates to that budget. My comments today will be brief. The Senate Finance Committee brings before you this afternoon its recommendations for amendments to the existing budget. In developing our recommendations, the committee focused on its firm commitment to providing tax relief through a refund to Virginia taxpayers this calendar year. At the same time, we're setting aside funding for responsible tax reforms we believe are necessary as a result of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act. To that end, we have dedicated almost $500 million to our tax reform fund. Given the uncertainty of taxpayer behavior and the revenues that will be realized in the current fiscal year, refunds will be sent out this October to ensure that tax reform remains our priority and that spending remains within our means. Our recommendations are to remove over $470 million in proposed spending included in the introduced budget that is supported by temporary tax revenues. Those revenues are to increase the individual standard deduction consistent with the provisions of the committee's tax policy and conformity legislation. We believe this responsible action, combined with our proposed substantial deposits to both the rainy day fund and the revenue cash reserve, will protect our valued AAA bond rating. Our proposal includes a deposit to the revenue cash reserve of $595.5 million over the biennium. When combined with the mandatory deposit to the rainy day fund of $263 million, our combined balance in savings, including those actions taken last year, will total about $1.3 billion by the end of fiscal year 2020. This is an amount that is crucial should our economy weaken at all. The priorities of the committee members are reflected in amendments before you, including $87.6 million for a 5% raise to our dedicated and hardworking K-12 teachers throughout the Commonwealth, $70 million provided to the Literary Fund for school construction, more than $15 million for higher education undergraduate student aid to maintain our commitment to access, critical investments in inmate health care, specifically at our women's correctional facilities, and target investments to improve school safety, and maintaining commitments to economic development and environmental stewardship. We're providing $740 million for agricultural best management practices, $50 million consistent with the Commonwealth's performance agreement with Micron, and $15 million to expand broadband access to rural and unserved areas of Virginia. This committee recognizes that remaining competitive in the 21st century economy requires internet access to every corner of Virginia. Before we move forward on the individual reports, I will ask Senator Hanger if he has any comments that he would like to share with us. Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Senator Norman. Good afternoon, everyone, members of the committee.
Senator Norman has basically outlined some of the major financial swings in revenue resources and areas other than health and human resources. And I would say in that area, as you know, the majority of spending in that area is due to the increased Medicaid forecast, which somewhat limits then the other areas that we're going to be able to target for additional resources. As there are limited resources available, additional investments in behavioral health do include $12.6 million to address census pressures at state mental health hospitals and $11 million for community behavioral services, including permanent supportive housing and outpatient services. The most critical provider is rate issues in Medicaid for physicians and mental health professionals. They're partially addressed, and these critical investments in our foster care system as well. All additional actions in health and human resources reflect our commitment to funding only the most urgent needs. As we're all aware, there are lots of unmet needs in the area of health and human resources. Now, turning to the procedure for today, we will call upon each subcommittee chair to make his or her report to the committee. After each subcommittee report is presented, we'll ask that the report and related amendments be accepted. After all subcommittee reports have been issued, we'll ask that the introduced Senate Bill 1100 be amended in accordance with the subcommittee reports and the bill as amended be reported. First up, Senator McDougall, Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Public Safety Subcommittee reviewed the governor's proposed amendments to the Office of Public Safety and Homeland Security and for the Office of Veterans and Defense Affairs. Overall, the subcommittee recommends adding slightly less than $40 million on top of what was proposed in the Chapter 2 budget to support these agencies. Mr. Chairman, the priority was given to the 123 full-time staff and adding almost $13 million on top of the existing almost $22 million to address the federal court requirements for healthcare at Fluvanna Correctional Facility. This will allow us to end the vendor contract for healthcare services at this facility, and our recommendation also endorses the electronic healthcare system for the women's facilities. In addition, the subcommittee is recommending $3.3 million for school safety enhancements. This includes the development of a new school safety app. This app will give students access to 24/7 crisis counseling and the ability to submit information about potential threats. At the Center for School and Campus Safety, we are also recommending an increase of $2.6 million on top of the existing $1.7 million in funding. That would be used to train all school resource officers, to purchase a threat assessment case management tool, to provide active shooter training, and offer technical assistance at the schools. The subcommittee also supported backfilling the almost $3.5 million at the Department of Forensic Science that is being used for the opioid response and to fund the ongoing cost of 12 controlled substance scientists. Our actions will support expediting a resolution of the backlog for controlled substances. Mr. Chairman, in closing, I would like to thank the members of the subcommittee, Senator Howell and Lucas, Norman, Carrico, and Obenshane, but most particularly, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Caitlin and Mike because of their assistance. Some of these issues were more complicated and interacted across different agencies, and Jason and April for their unwavering support, and ask that the committee accept the subcommittee's report.
Okay, heard Senator McDougall's motion. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Senator McDougall. Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Your Transportation Subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed amendments for the agencies of the Transportation Secretariat. I'm pleased to present to you our recommendations that we believe will continue to keep Virginia positioned as a global leader in a technology-based economy. To that end, we recommend strengthening our successful public-private partnerships with both the federal government and the commercial aerospace industry. We recommend additional targeted investments in the Virginia Commercial Space Flight Authority. We specifically recommend funding to complete construction of a small rocket launch facility in partnership with Rocket Lab and improving the capacity of Wallops Island facility to handle testing of sea-based autonomous systems. Additionally, the subcommittee recommends that we begin planning today for the mobility for the mobility needs of the future. We believe now is the time to begin evaluating mobility options along the Route 1 corridor to assess the most cost-effective approaches to providing mass transit through one of our fastest-growing regions. Mr. Chairman, this completes the report of the Transportation Subcommittee, and I'd particularly like to thank Jason for all the hard work and all the members of the committee for their input on this. And with that, I would move adoption of those amendments.
You heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion properly supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is adopted. Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and both Mr. Chairman. And the committees of the committee, members of the committee, your subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budget amendments for the Secretariats of Agriculture and Forestry, Commerce and Trade, and Natural Resources. We recommend maintaining targeted investments in broadband and continuing our commitment to environmental stewardship while making fiscally responsible reallocations where prudent. The subcommittee proposes a $15 million increase for broadband in fiscal year 2020, making the total of $19 million. This will significantly accelerate investment in broadband infrastructure in rural and in unserved areas. In addition, we recommend increasing by $2 million our investment in developing business-ready sites and buildings. We further propose an investment of $1 million to encourage the deployment of solar equipment in economic revitalization areas. The subcommittee believes these investments will quickly pay off by attracting more high-paying jobs and capital investment throughout the Commonwealth. In addition, the subcommittee incorporates the investment from Micron by proposing an appropriation to the Semiconductor Manufacturing Grant Fund of $50 million in fiscal year 2020. In the area of natural resources, we embrace the deposit of $73.8 million in the Water Quality Improvement Fund in order to maintain our shared commitment to improving the health of the Chesapeake Bay and Virginia's southern rivers through responsible investments in agriculture and best managed practices. We very much appreciate the hard work of Charles and Jason as they worked with the committee, and we hope this will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt these amendments. I so move.
It's been moved that the committee report be accepted from Economic Development Natural Resources. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of accepting the Economic Development and Natural Resources Subcommittee report signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Senator Hanger, you're going to report to us on Health and Human.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Today, I'm pleased to provide the report of the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee. This year, the subcommittee, as I indicated earlier, was limited in resources, but was able to redirect funding to continue to build upon the work from previous sessions, which have resulted in significant investments in areas like community behavioral health and the foster care system. With regards to behavioral health, these recommendations adopt much of the new funding, providing $3 million for children's crisis services and $5 million for outpatient services, which is a key part of the STEP Virginia initiative to develop a base level of community services across all community services boards in the Commonwealth. In addition, these recommendations adopt $6.5 million for direct care staffing at the state's mental health hospitals to address staffing needs due to census pressures. Furthermore, a total of $3 million in new funding is recommended for permanent supportive housing, which continues to be a priority of the subcommittee. Budget language is also included to develop a plan to determine how best to right-size the state's mental health hospital system to better allocate resources toward a community-based system. The subcommittee recommendations include additional investments to raise Medicaid reimbursements to physicians and licensed mental health professionals in an effort to improve the workforce and coverage for these services. While the subcommittee would like to do more in improving provider rates for a variety of services, the limited resources available required us to focus on the most critical needs. The subcommittee will continue to evaluate issues in provider access and address them as needed in future years. As the members of this committee know, the Medicaid forecast was higher than expected and requires in total, in 3 different areas, $463 million in additional funding from the general fund. But with some good news, the subcommittee has identified $30 million in the forecast that is not necessary due to previous federal action to suspend an insurance tax that impacts the program. In addition, the subcommittee has deliberated on ways to improve the overall Medicaid forecasting process, and these recommendations will provide greater legislative oversight and transparency of the process. Medicaid, as we all know, is the largest program in the state budget, providing important services to many Virginians. Ensuring the accuracy of spending forecasts is critical, not only for the program itself, but for our overall budget process. In the area of social services, I'd like to highlight 2 recommendations of the subcommittee. The first one is to provide $1.8 million to implement the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, recommendation for improving our foster care system. And we need to recognize Virginia continues to have one of the better systems in the nation. This JLARC report, though, highlighted some issues in the system where there were some holes, and the subcommittee recommendations include funding to ensure Virginia's foster care system continues to be the best to serve children under the state's care. In addition, the subcommittee recommends some startup funding related to new availability of federal funding for evidence-based foster care prevention services. This new federal law will eventually allow Virginia to transition many of its prevention services funded children programs to evidence-based programs with a federal match. As I conclude, let me thank all of the members of the subcommittee for their hard work and the time they invested to put this report together. I sincerely appreciate the contributions and efforts of each member of the subcommittee to create this report. And obviously, as all of you are well aware, the multi-talented Mike Tweedy, who is always very helpful to us any hour of the day or night, early morning, with a smile on his face. So we certainly all appreciate that. The members of the committee, of course, we're starting down on this end: Senator Barker, Senator Howell, Senator Norman. Senator Newman's missing right at the moment, and Senator Dance. I believe that's the group of us. Mr. Chairman, with that, I would move that we adopt this subcommittee report.
It's been moved that the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee report be adopted. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of adopting the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, and that committee report is adopted.
Mr. Chairman, up next is the education report. As you know, there will be a K-12 public education, which I will give, and then Senator Norman will give the higher education. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Sarah for her late nights and also wisdom that she's given all of us, and also April for her oversight. Your subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budget amendments for education. You will recall the 2018 adopted budget had already included a biennial increase of $664 million for direct aid to public education, largely due to fully funding the rebenchmarking and planned second-year teacher salary funding of 3%. Then the introduced budget that came to us reflected some savings, notably to slowing enrollment growth, as well as some proposed new action. After much debate, the subcommittee recommends $87.6 million to raise teacher salaries, and which includes some local flexibility of up to 5% increase for our teachers. The amendments also retain $70 million for the Literary Fund school construction support, utilizing an interest rate subsidy approach to reach more school divisions and to reach them faster. Other amendments include $10 million for more school counselors and other actions related to K-12 that you will see from the attached spreadsheet. Next up, I'll give you Senator Norman.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Newman.
Thank you, Senator Newman. Turning to higher education, on top of the increased funding of $120 million for higher education in the previously adopted budget, the Senate's recommendations include an additional $15.5 million in financial aid support to address the 35% of the need. other funding targeted support for workforce credentials, as well as computer science degrees and other actions. The members of the Joint Subcommittee on the Future Competitiveness of Higher Education in Virginia will continue working to address priorities of affordability, access, and economic development that institutions collectively contribute to the overall success of the Commonwealth. To that end, we are embracing an innovative performance pilot approach related to the goals. With the presentation of Senator Newman on K through 12 and the higher education, I would ask that the committee adopt our report.
Is there a second? Second. Motion properly supported to adopt the report from the Education Committee presented by Senator Newman and Senator Norman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That report is adopted.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
And
Norman.
I want to extend a special note of appreciation to both Sarah and April, who have worked tirelessly on this, both public ed and on higher education. Mr. Chairman, if I could now turn to capital outlay and general government, if anyone is still awake. The Capital Outlay and General Government Subcommittee worked diligently to review the introduced budget for areas related to legislative, judicial, administrative, finance, and capital outlay. This year, the subcommittee's primary objective was to continue Virginia's long-standing practice of prioritizing strong fiscal management. These priorities include depositing additional funds to the reserve revenue fund, setting aside funding for the mandatory rainy day fund deposit, and limiting the allocation of new resources to track with ongoing sustainable growth. The Finance Committee as a whole embraced a similar philosophy so that the majority of the resources related to Tax Cuts and Jobs Act may be returned to the taxpayers. The subcommittee's priorities in general government included over $419 million for a tax refund in October this year, as well as $80 million for a tax reform fund to address any additional temporary or permanent tax reform in 2020 through 2022. It includes a study by JLARC on gaming governance and expansion, which has certainly been a topic this session. It includes the Department of Elections in funding $800,000 to address concerns identified by JLARC in its September 2018 report relating to local election training, enhanced voter list maintenance, and fiscal administration. It includes a 3% base pay increase for general registrars effective July 1, 2019. It includes a $3.8 million for incremental increase in retiree health care credit for public safety employees. It includes $600,000 for the Indigent Defense Commission to address increased workloads related to local law enforcement's use of body-worn cameras. It includes a pilot program in Virginia Beach to address the issues of substance abuse and mental health amongst incarcerated individuals. In the area of capital outlay, a conservative approach was also applied. The introduced budget included a smaller number of additional construction projects as compared to the budget that we adopted a year ago. The majority of these programs were embraced by the subcommittee as they were related to infrastructure or safety concerns. This included the STARS program, which is the statewide agency's radio system, which we are phasing in over a 4-year period in an effort to regularly fund ongoing requirements related to this system. The total actions of the Capital Outlay Subcommittee reduced tax-supported debt by $86.7 million as compared to the introduced budget. That reduction came about primarily as amortizing the STARS funding over a 4-year period as opposed to doing it all in 1 year. Additionally, the subcommittee restricted the number of new projects that will be planned for the remainder of the biennium, redirecting over $10 million from the general fund as an acknowledgement that we will need to address previously planned projects in the next biennium. Mr. Chairman, this completes the report of the Subcommittee on Capital Outlay and General Government, and I would like to express my appreciation for the subcommittee members and again, that which Jason and April and the rest of the members have done. So with that, I'd ask you to approve the report.
We have a motion to adopt the report of general government and capital outlay. Is there a second? Motion properly supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have one remaining report, the resources report, which in some years is not a whole lot to it. This year, a little different in that we had a lot of people engaging in promoting different forms of tax policy. Senator Norman and I chair the resources subcommittee, and Senator Howe, Senator Saslaw, Senator Ruff, Senator Newman joined us on that as we reviewed a number of bills. A lot of technical information in resources as far as movement of dollars within the budget. So the chair would entertain a motion at this time to adopt the resources report.
So moved, sir.
Motion properly supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is adopted. Sir Norman, do you
Mr.
have
Chairman,
anything to add?
I would just add that the resource report is fairly lengthy, so there is a distribution of it in the written format.
Okay. With that, we have the bill, Senate Bill 1100, in front of us with the amendments from the various committees. Is there further discussion? Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion properly supported to report Senate Bill 1100, which the middle of last week we didn't think might happen, but we got it all together.
There was never a question in my mind.
Well, I knew we'd do it, but you know, I'm proud of all of us, for doing this. Thank all the members and the staff. With no further discussion, clerk, open the roll.
Roll's open.
Cast your votes.
Ayes 16, no zero.
Ayes 16, no zero. The budget bill is reported. Thank you, Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, for those of you that have nothing better to do in life than observe the Senate in its floor debates, you're aware that we had a fairly robust and spirited discussion about our approach on taxation. And at the conclusion of that, I made it very clear that we're going to continue, at least in this body, to move forward with a bipartisan discussion as we move forward into budget conference. And I just wanted to reaffirm that because that is a representation that I made to the other 39 senators. Before we leave, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the senators join me in extending our hearty appreciation to our Senate Finance staff, which has really been working obscene hours over the last, so if you would please join me in
I think that is well deserved, yes.
I would say with that, Mr. Chairman, that the staff can go home and go to sleep for the first night in about 4 days. And with that, mercifully, the committee will rise.
And we will see them at 7 o'clock in the morning.